Hey everybody, this is Tony, the Geeky Agent from here in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, actually in Binbrook, which is in the farthest southeast corner. Thought we'd get together here. I haven't done an episode of the Lunchbox in a while, so I thought a good way to bring it back would be to do an update for everybody. Sometime about a year ago or so, we did a coast-to-coast Canadian real estate update with a bunch of friends of mine from various RE/MAX offices across Canada. And so I thought we'd bring them all back and we'd have a chat to see what is going on in real estate, because I know there's tons of stuff in the news. There's tons of doom and gloom stuff. There's tons of more positive stuff. There's things about what the government is doing or not doing to help the situation and all this other sort of stuff. And so we just want to kind of get a snapshot of what is happening from British Columbia all the way to Nova Scotia and Halifax, with a few spots in between. So without further ado, I am going to bring a bunch of my friends into the meeting here, and then we will introduce them all as soon as we get a chance. Here we go. And so I have four of my very good friends from across Canada, also all RE/MAX agents, just coincidentally, that go from British Columbia to Nova Scotia, as I mentioned. And so far as I can see on my screen, I'll kind of introduce people west to east. So in the furthest west, I believe we have Tony Joe in Victoria, BC, with RE/MAX Prime Properties there. Geoff McLennan in New Westminster, BC, a suburb-ish of Vancouver, right? And then here in Ontario is myself, here in Hamilton, like I mentioned, and my good friend Jessica Hellard, which is located in Kingston, Ontario. And then going to the East Coast, we have Adam Cooper with the Bagogloo team at RE/MAX Nova right in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So we've got everybody here. Some of your mics are off, which are good. Jessica's video is off for the moment. She is chilling out by a waterfront property, I believe, in Kingston. So hopefully she'll pop that on in a sec. But we're going to have just a quick chat, as I was mentioning to everyone. And maybe we'll go around the horn here and let everybody introduce themselves and tell us about your little area first, and then we'll get into sort of what's happening in real estate. So Tony Joe is, as we were talking before, the most experienced of this group. He's got the longest service record in real estate for sure, going back to the 1990s. So he's had a really good view of the markets going up and down and around, and all the things you can think of in terms of government intervention and interest rate hikes and drops and all that sort of stuff. But let us know, you're out in Victoria. What is your market in Victoria like for people who aren't that familiar?
Hey there, everyone. Well, I think most people's first experience of Victoria is as a tourist, coming and visiting and all that. We are known, of course, as being the provincial capital. We're the West Coast Navy base. Tourism, like I said, we're a technology hub now too, our proximity to Seattle, right? Our population here is about 400,000. It's growing quite a bit. It's funny because, I started 1991. In fact, I go so far back that they implemented GST when I was in the real estate business. So you think about that, or your guys' HST anyways. So things have changed. When I first started here, the population of Victoria was around 250,000. So it's kind of interesting just seeing a place, every once in a while we complain about traffic jams, like the Victoria traffic jams, which is nothing compared to what any of you guys experience. But when we think about it, well, of course there's traffic jams. Our population is growing because everyone is coming from somewhere else. We have, Victoria is one of these places where very few people here are actually from here. Born and raised in Victoria. I'm one of them, everyone here has come from another place, and it's been a destination of choice for many. So that's what's
does it attract more people like myself, my age, like in the 40s and 50s, looking to kind of, they've lived in the place and they moved there, or is it people looking for retirement? Or is it
there's an old saying, Victoria is the home of the newlywed and nearly dead. That's what they used to say, right? behind the tweed curtain, they called it. Victoria is more English than England. They say, with the double decker buses and all that.
Mhm.
That was true to some degree, Tony. But actually, since COVID, we have found something very interesting happen, and that is a lot of younger families are moving over this way because we've had the migration from people cashed out of the Lower Mainland, right?
Mhm.
And then they wanted to come to a slower pace, less traffic. We have a lot of Ontario that did that as well too.
Oh yeah.
Combined with the fact that there's a lot of people that are from Victoria and they went elsewhere for their careers. And then what happened is with COVID, a lot of them still remain gainfully employed either in the Lower Mainland or Toronto. So they got their job, yet they came back home and they're still working remotely. So there's been a lot of that. So we are definitely younger. Our schools are full. One of our brand new high schools, the day it opened, was already slated for an expansion.
There you go.
So that's what's happening.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's move over to Geoff, also on the West Coast. And let's see, in New Westminster, BC. Very similar, like I mentioned, to where I am here in Hamilton, being 45 minutes away from Toronto. Like, what's the commute time to Vancouver from New West?
We're, depending on where you are, we're about half an hour to Vancouver.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah, not a big drive. New West is, of all the Vancouver suburbs, the smallest. Tony's talking about how traffic jams and everything. I think our population's about 70,000, so we're little by comparison. We do have a bone to pick with Victoria. New West was the capital of British Columbia.
That's right.
And then there was a fire where a big portion of the city burned down. And then mysteriously after the fire, Victoria was named the capital. So, I mean, if those things are connected, who's to say? But
Right.
So that's why they've got that big matchstick in front
right now.
There's the gigantic matchstick in front of the apartment buildings here. That's probably.
Yeah, there you go, Tony. And I can support what Tony was saying about who's going to Victoria. I had multiple clients last year who were like, things are crazy here. Now's the time to sell my townhouse and buy a house in Victoria. Unfortunately, timing was difficult because I think there was like maybe a 1 or 2 month gap where you could make it work. And then Victoria exploded too. And the numbers, like Victoria went nuts last year.
Yeah, like most places across the country. Yeah,
totally.
Okay. Let's bring it back over to Ontario. I will be the gentleman and let the ladies go first. So we'll get Jessica to give us a chat about what's happening in Kingston.
Yeah, I mean, just like everywhere, we've been drastically affected by COVID. So Kingston, for people who don't know, is right smack in between basically Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto, and has often been people just working in our area, but that changed. We have tons of lakes north of us as well, and that attracted a huge number of people. But smaller town, like our population's always been around 124. Except for it's been like that for 20 years, and I've seen subdivision after subdivision. So I don't know how often they update those.
Right.
I don't believe it's accurate, but basically we had the same thing where people that were working in Toronto were like, can't afford a place in Toronto. They're like, why don't I live on the lake? Why don't I, have a 4-season cottage and work out there?
Right.
With internet challenges, you've got to figure that out. But our inventory was already kind of short as we were already in a seller's market. And then it went pretty nuts. And all of our stuff probably went up like 30%, something crazy. And I mean, we made news articles for being the highest jump for a city. And just because we're right in that perfect zone that people could still go back to their city if they had to, but was still priced, I think, below what it should have been already. Our average price point was maybe 400,000 just a few years ago. And it was always pretty low for what you could get out here.
Are you seeing a
But the cottages
contraction?
went crazy too.
Oh yeah,
What's that?
waterfront across the board went nuts everywhere. But
Yeah.
have you seen a contraction? Have you seen people? And I'll put this out to everybody else as well later. But people being told that they have to go back to the office. So there were people that were moving for remote work, and now they're like, "Oops, I'm not going to be able to do one day in the office. I got to be there for 3 or 4 days a week." And sort of looking at, okay, what do I do now?
I haven't seen that yet. I know people have started talking about it in their offices,
Right.
and I think everybody that I know has made some pretty major changes, and they're going to fight it if they do have a request to move back. It's been proven it works. Like it's a lower cost. Actually, we have a couple of large places that they actually have talked about bringing people back in, but they actually changed their infrastructure so that they don't have as much overhead, and so they've actually saved money in that way. But so far, nobody has been forced to sell again.
No. All right, cool. I will just want to do this, and I'm just trying to manage the video here because it's not cooperating. But I'll chime in, I guess, because being in Ontario as well, not too far from Kingston, really. We are a bedroom community almost for Toronto, as most people like to think of us, although we are growing like crazy too here in the Hamilton area. And in Hamilton, that's like halfway between Niagara Falls and Toronto, for people who are familiar with the area. We are about just over 500,000 people, about 550,000. And again, that's relatively recent numbers, and that includes like the surrounding areas that are technically part of the greater city of Hamilton. But we've grown like crazy too, and we're projected to grow up to like 750,000 over the next 6 to 8 years, which is a huge growth. And part of that proximity to the border, proximity to Toronto, and we have a growing we have like one of the, I think, the lowest rates of unemployment in the entire country. Like our commercial sector is growing like crazy as well, because we have an airport, we've got access to rail shipping, sea shipping, transport trucks, the whole deal. So our labor market's doing really well. So tons of people are moving here. And then same as like Geoff was mentioning, and Tony and everybody, we had a higher price point. Like back in 2018, our average price was $575 or something like that. So it had been increasing. We have a prolonged seller's market. We've been in a seller's market since probably before 2017. It was just a question of how bad of a seller's market is it. So it's gone up and down, but being farther away from Toronto, whose average price is much closer to $1 million, we were the cheaper option. And we were within about 45 minutes. So we've always had that migration. And then people from where I am in Hamilton migrating towards Niagara because it's farther away and it's less expensive. So we've had that forever. But we're a university town, university college town. We've got 5 hospitals, including research hospitals, teaching hospitals, the Ontario Cancer Research Center is here, lots of innovation and all that sort of stuff. It is a steel town. It's still a very industrial town, even though the steel mills aren't in quite as much production as they were in their heyday. But a lot of that's being cleaned up and turned around into other businesses. But we have, we're on Lake Ontario, and we're, like I said, an hour to Toronto, an hour to the border. So we have access to Niagara and the lake and all that stuff. We don't really have a lot of lakefront properties. We do, but just not in the way that you would think up in like Muskoka and stuff. We've got a few houses that sit on Lake Ontario, and that's about it. They're not really surrounded by trees or anything like that. But tons of opportunities and a wide range of housing. Like we got, everything from the $2, $3, $4 million properties, mansions, properties, acreages to, the more affordable, which at this point, the average price is almost $1 million. But there are still properties in the 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 range, like sort of entry level at this point, which used to be 150,000, 200,000. So we've got a wide range of housing, even though the price for everything has gone up quite a bit. And same, we saw a ton of people moving from Toronto, like Geoff was saying, selling their condos in Toronto and that because the prices went nuts, and then coming to Hamilton to buy either a townhouse or detached house to get extra space. Like every time they announced another lockdown in Ontario, people went a bit squirrely and said, I need a bigger house. So they decided to come look in Hamilton. And I'm sure that's happened in other places too. And we are starting to hear rumors again. That's why I brought it up about businesses starting to tell their people. And I know a few who have already had a bit of a revolt where the employees have said, no, we're good. Like we've been doing this for 2 years and we've been productive, and I don't want to start doing another 2-hour every morning commute one way to work again. And with gas prices being where they are, it's like, yeah, I totally understand that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that falls out over the next year, 2 years, or whatever it is. But that's kind of where we're at. I think we're experiencing the same as everybody else. Increased inventory and increased interest rates have affected the market, which we'll get into. But that's Hamilton in a nutshell. We've got, CFL football, CPL soccer. The Hamilton Bulldogs are fighting against Windsor tonight for the OHL championship, and they may go on from there. So we got lots of stuff, lots of restaurants and that sort of thing, like you might expect. But yeah, it's a fun town. I've lived here my whole life. I like it. So if you want to come check it out, I'm always available. But let's go now to the East Coast. You've got our friend Adam Cooper in Halifax, where a lot of people from Hamilton and Ontario have moved to during COVID, as well as Victoria. Let's put Adam in there. There you go.
So Halifax, for those who don't know, is it's kind of a mixed bag between being a military town, being a university town, and being kind of a tourist destination. I would say we were the capital of the Maritimes because we're probably the most established city. We have probably in the mid 400,000 range in terms of population, but Nova Scotia as a whole and Halifax as a city are kind of hitting that point where we're just making the leap into being more than just like a small town or a smaller province. Mm-hmm. The province has put a big push on to try and grow the population here. Like they've been actively advertising places like Hamilton. I remember Tony and I spoke about it to say move to Nova Scotia. So it's been a market that's kind of been in flux. From about 2013 to 2017, we were very much a buyer's market and there was not many gains. We started running short on inventory probably the end of 2018, heading into 2019. And then on the back of the pandemic, things just got a lot worse. And it switched to being a very strong seller's market. I had never seen in the 10 years I've done this, us being in an environment where we could list a property and hold offers. And that sort of shifted a lot of the buyer's behavior. So that in the last kind of 10 days, it started to revert back to we can no longer do that. But generally speaking, for us, it's been an interesting time. Normally, what would happen here is a lot of people that went to school, went to university here, would get qualified and then go off to Toronto or Vancouver or BC to get, their career started. And during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people moving back so they could work remotely. I started to hear rumbles as well that there's going to be some of these employers are going to say, no, we want you on site. Some of the CEOs and management people I've dealt with have said they just need it to make it easier to manage people. What the fallout and the pushback will be, I don't know. The other X factor I think is going to play in is some of the people coming from like the GTA or BC or more established cities are missing things like we don't have an NHL team, we don't have a CFL team. We're still at a point where we haven't got that infrastructure in place yet. So I think there's going to be a sector of the people that came in the last 2 years that will maybe want to go back where they are going to have to go through the growing pains of establishing that. I mean, Halifax does feel like it's a opportunity for a lot of people to bring franchises and to develop businesses in here. But if you're coming from a city where you had a lot of that stuff already, you might have to wait a bit to get it. It's a great city. There's a lot of tourism here. You're never more than 30 minutes away from the ocean. We still have that kind of small town vibe. There's a lot of, a lot of support local, a lot of great things that happen in the city. It's just interesting to see how that's going to play out as we become more of a big city than a small town.
Yeah. So you're not getting, next day Amazon deliveries or same day Amazon deliveries. And that's
not yet
upsetting the people from Toronto.
Not yet, but it's coming. You can get 2-day delivery now.
Well, there you go.
Progress.
Yeah, you're making progress. I'm going to just so we're all on here. I did want to share this one. So, aside from being RE/MAX agents, we are also connected in another way, just so everybody knows. I do mention this like every time I do. We are all card-carrying members of the League of Real Estate Geeks, in case you're all wondering. What is that? It's a bunch of real estate agents. I started this group, I don't even know how many years ago at this point, it might be 6 or 7. Tony Joe was one of the original members, and then we added people as we go along. They're real estate agents across Canada, United States, pretty much anywhere, but it's primarily Canada, United States right now, who just have a passion for pop culture to this extent, where we do certain things like this. This was at the last conference we all attended prior to the COVID lockdowns in Niagara Falls there. Jessica's there in the back with her green lightsaber, and a few other people, Bruce Johnson and Billy from the US was there. There's Tony Joe helping me hold our banner. Andrew's there as well. This was the last one that I don't think we've had one where we've all been together. We've had some where we've had 10, 11, 12 of us there, but there's right now about 40-ish members altogether, and it's all pop culture fun stuff. So we are friends, and we have other interests outside of real estate too, but that is the one common thread that we all have, really is. And we have all different kinds of fandoms. Like Tony Joe and Adam are big James Bond 007 guys, and there's a bunch of us that are Star Trek fans and Star Wars, and you name it, Game of Thrones and whatnot. None of us here like Wheel of Time though. None of us. Just Andrew. Just gonna put that out there. And you're all on mute, so we can't.
I object.
All right.
But it is a long series to read.
Yeah, there you go. But let's get into the numbers a little bit, I guess. I'll throw out some here, and I'm just pulling these if you want, and these are all publicly available numbers. I'm not doing any magic number crunching. I don't want to get accused of any sort of conspiracy theory that I'm trying to bump up the market or anything like that. For us at I'm part of the Realtors Association of Hamilton Burlington. The website is rahb.ca. You can go check out the website, and have market statistics posted there at the end of every month, and you're free to dive in and look at some pretty granular information about what's happening in the real estate market in Hamilton Burlington. Just our end of May numbers. So we're into June now, but we have numbers for May. The overall number of sales went down. So the prices didn't really go down too much, but the overall number of sales went down by about 5% compared to the month before. And compared to last year, we're down about 32%. So we sold 32% fewer properties, but it's kind of a mixed bag though, right? So prices are actually just down almost 2%, 1.7% from the prior month, but they're up 17.6% compared to last year. So if you're buying in May of 2020 and you're buying in May of 2021, you're paying almost 18% more on average. So prices are still good. And that's after, we've already kind of experienced a dip in prices here in Ontario and Hamilton specifically. January, February, March was like the peak on top of a peak, I like to call it, because the prices have been going crazy. And like I said, we've been in a prolonged seller's market here. And it's mainly inventory driven. Like the last really crazy market prior to COVID was 2017 for us. And in January 2017, we had about 1,100 properties on the market for all of Hamilton Burlington. Well, at the end of December 2020, so just over a year and a half ago, we had 400. And at the end of December 2021, we had fewer than 200. So fewer than 200 properties on the market for all of Hamilton Burlington. So January, February, March, it followed, but was just nuts. People were competing. Prices they were already spiking, and then it was like a spike on top of the spike. And then suddenly, just in the month of May, so we had fewer than 200 listings at the end of December 2021. And in May alone, we had 2,631 new listings on the market. So you had a flood of inventory, literally over 10 times as much inventory just in the month of May hit the market. That on top of, as we've all seen, Bank of Canada interest rate hikes have kind of given buyers more options and also taken away some of their buying power. So things are kind of leveling off. But prices, even though they've come down from that little peak that we had in February, March, are still almost 18% higher than they were last year. So if you were sitting on the fence since last year, just waiting for the market to crash, you might have come out on the other side of this little, peak, but you're still paying more than you did last year. So you're not really ahead. and you're paying a higher interest rate at this point as well. So those are the two things that are compounding each other. So if you're like, and I have a few of these friends too, who are also real estate agents and other people who are just literally for over 10 years been predicting the market at the bottom, the fallout of the market. And you just wait, it's going to be cheaper than it is now. And they're predicting that prices will go back to where they were in 2017, which would mean an average price under 500,000. And our current average price is 995,000. So that would be, if that happens, I'm predicting the entire Canadian economy just explodes, and we have much bigger price problems than what the price of a house is. So that's just kind of my quick snapshot. I don't mean to be too flippant about it. It's still a very busy market. Things are still selling, but they are sitting on the market longer. The holding offers thing is becoming less popular. Just because people have options, and we don't really have to hold properties to give people a chance to see them. We can kind of let them take their time and go out and look at properties. We're actually negotiating conditions again. Like, you can definitely ask for home inspections, even sale of property conditions. So I prefer this market. I prefer having people get pre-qualified, going to the bank, check their financing once they've made an offer on a house, make sure everything's cool, giving everybody the chance to have a home inspection so they can feel comfortable with what they're buying, at least know what they're getting into, and have a chance to negotiate, because this crazy high pressure market that we've had here for the last 2 years is not fun for anyone, in my opinion. But I'll leave it up to you guys. Who wants to kind of chime in as to what's happening in your area? Do we go west to east again, or do we go east to west, or who wants to go first? I'll let Tony go first because he's the smart guy. You always know your numbers. So
there's that old saying, that it's 96% of the statistics that a presenter gives you we're making up on the spot.
Well, that's 110% for me.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, you know what? It just I feel that maybe the story is going to be sort of consistent across our panel here. Very similar to Hamilton. So Victoria's numbers. We're down now. So our sales number was down about 22% from last May. So we're talking May to May. I'm sorry, 27% we're down. Active listings are up 22%. So we haven't had the listing explosion that I've heard about in other places, like what you were saying, Tony. The other thing, though, too, is that we never hit that minimum listing point, like your 200.
Right.
I do know that the months of inventory in Victoria, because you guys were like less than half a month's inventory for a long time.
We're at about 1.7 right now, and for a while we were at 0.2.
Yeah. See, we never went to 0.5. We were hovering always around that sort of 1 or 1.5. So there was always, there was always choices, but our prices went crazy too, right? I mean, we're right now, average price for a detached single family home in Greater Victoria is about 1.4. And that is up about 19.5% from last year. But as with Hamilton, we are down 2% from last month, right? So, we have kind of rounded that corner. I don't know why. I'm always comparing to 2018, of course, because I remember we were there, right? For many, we remember 2016, 2017 were also busy times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at the average sale price of 1.4 now compared to the average sale price of May 2018, it was 921. We're up 50%.
Yeah.
Right. So prices went up 50% in 4 years.
Yeah. Well, we were 585, and I had a Facebook memory pop up from 2018, the average price being 585 in Hamilton, which everybody was losing their minds over, because that was like a crazy record price. And like I said, our average just dropped from just over 1 million to 995. So basically $1 million. So from 2018 to 2022, we went from just under 600,000 to $1 million average price. So yeah.
There we go. So same story though, more choices. We are seeing conditional offers. We have seen a fair amount of people that were hoping to get what they could have gotten maybe 2 months ago, the unconditional multiple offer
Yeah.
situation, and not getting it, and consequently taking their properties off the market.
Yeah.
Right. They had their eye on another property or things like that. And it's funny because you hear all this commentary about agents saying, "Oh, it's so much harder now. We have to follow up with showings, and we have to, do all this kind of
Do our
stuff."
jobs.
And it's tough. And of course, we're like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what we used to do. People just got lazy in the past 2 years. Right.
Yeah. Well, have you noticed, this is, maybe I'll ask this across the board too. Have you had an influx of agents on your board? Like, we went from, I think pre-COVID, we were at about 3,100 agents, and just over the last 2 years, and that was pretty steady for a very long time. And then just, I think now over the last 2 years, we've peaked at about 3,600 agents. And there's a lot of people that were getting into it thinking, this is easy. You just do the sign on the lawn, hold offers, and within 5 days, the house is sold, and don't worry about liabilities. Don't worry about all this other kind of stuff. And now they're learning. It's like, I've got to do stuff.
So I can speak to that because one of my other side interests is as a instructor for our provincial regulator for the British Columbia Financial Services Authority. So I've been teaching for 10 years. And I'm one of the guys that teaches the course. After people pass the exam, they have to take this applied practice course before they get full licensing.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, I'm one of, I don't know, there might be 18 or 20 instructors. Typically, I teach 5 times a year, every couple of months, right? Last year, I did 15. Right now, I am right in the middle of number 8 for the year. And I'm not the only one. I mean, that is just the caseload of new licensing. So we have tripled in new licensees coming into the business. And and that is what, and it's what you said, Tony. It's interesting because they all talk about their background and everything. And they almost all say, well, I lost my job in hospitality, or, I've heard that things are going great, and real estate seems. I love HGTV and those home shows, so I think I'm going to get into real estate. So the other thing that I should mention, and I think this is slightly anecdotal, is there was a stat that there was an 80% attrition rate after 2 years.
Yeah,
for new licenses. I feel that will be higher as a result of the last year or two. So
what I've actually heard, it was kind of funny. A friend of mine was at a party, and as a real estate agent, we go to gatherings with friends and stuff like that, and everybody wants to talk about real estate, at least for part of the evening. And he was getting things like, because you hear all the negative spin in the media, and he was getting things like people saying like, well, what are you going to do now? Like, and he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, like real estate, I mean, it's over. Like, what are you going to do now? Like, you had a good run. Like, what's your plan for the future? And he's just like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep working. Like, he's been in the business like 15, 16 years. Right. And he's like, yeah, I'm just going to keep doing what I did before everything, when it's a job. I don't know. But the impression people have out there is that the sky is falling. Real estate is, like they said, over. Like, you had a good run. Now what's in the, are you going to go get that hospitality job that to fill in the time kind of thing? And so we are hearing a few anecdotes like that, but that is the impression in people's mind that the media spin is putting out there, that the world, everything is coming crashing down, prices have come down, sales have come down, interest rates are going up, and we know about inflation and everything else that's happening globally. It's people are having a real dark cloud moment, right, about everything that's going on.
Well, but how soon we forget, because like Jessica, you probably remember, like back in 2008, the subprime crash and everything. That was a tough time, because when 2009 rolled around, like we didn't, it was spooky. People weren't buying things. You couldn't sell things in areas which were normally saleable. Prices softened a bit, and we were not near as bad as the guys in the States, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I had friends driving down to the States to buy places that were just abandoned at that time to invest in them. I don't know if that was a good idea, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I got into real estate in 2005 thinking, oh, this is a great job. And 2005 was great. 2004 was great. But by the time I got my license, everything changed. So, and then it changed even further with everything that happened in 2008. And yeah, I think as things change, people forget that there's like a buying side, there's a selling side, there's an investing side. So everybody has like something that's happening through real estate, no matter what cycle. As much as, you know, buyer agents worked really, really hard, listing agents maybe didn't, and that's going to shift a bit now. But back when there was a bit of a dip, I found I had a lot of investor clients taking opportunity to get a few more real estate properties for investing. I mean, I'm from a town that has had one of the lowest vacancy rates in Ontario for a decade or so, because we're student rentals, we're a small town.
Yeah.
And it was a great time to get some of those properties. So there's always going to be some business for the working agent that wants to work. But
Right.
yeah, like you said, people that think it's easy, selling sunset, all that stuff, like it's a different world than that. And
Not every property of yours is $1 million listing. No.
Oh my gosh.
Not HGTV worthy. No.
I mean, I love the idea of it, but I mean, it's definitely, you know, you can't just be that person all the time. Like sometimes you have to go into a creepy basement and, you know, there's floods and then there's estate sales. Like there's all kinds of properties, but we have to know a lot about what we're doing. And Kingston's never been a super high end area, even though it should be. So you see that a lot, but we found we got quite a few agents too joining, and young people that this is the time because they've actually lost their job during COVID or something, right? They're like, I've always thought about this. I'm home anyway, and might take some courses. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes over the next couple of years, especially as teams have developed. And it's been hard to be an individual agent without being able to do open houses and all of that. I mean, you're not supposed to go around door knocking when everyone's scared of you, right? So I don't know how easy it was for those people until they got a listing because their brother or something was listing.
Exactly. So Geoff, what are you seeing out there? Are you kind of getting the same kind of thing happening out there in turning? Because you're very similar to us, like, and that's what I saw. So we had that exodus of people from the big city to come out this way. We're starting to see a bit of a contraction. Same thing. We all of a sudden, I think what happened here for us, and I'm sure everywhere else, is that prices kept rising, and it finally broke that threshold where people were like, had been sitting on the fence for a very long time. And then it just got so high that they're just like, I can't pass this up and I just have to sell. And then all of a sudden we had a huge number of listings on the market. Like what's happening out in the West?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I think the market across the board seems to have corrected for two major reasons, in my opinion. One is the interest rate change, which, like you kind of alluded to, sometimes people are paying less sticker price than they would have 3 months ago, but their actual payments are higher because the interest rates went up, and the market, whenever interest rates go up, the market corrects because of that. And the other thing is buyer fatigue, right? Like people were tired of competing with 10 to 15 other buyers on every offer and having to write subject free. And I think everybody's relieved that seems to be over. I've, just like Tony Joe was talking about, found that if you set an offer day, buyers are still willing to write, but they're not willing to write when you tell them to. Like there's no more, hey, on Monday, we're looking at offers. Like when the market first shifted, I did 2 listings that I did both of them. Both of them got offers, but the day after. And then after that, I've been doing offers without delay, and we're still getting multiple offers on most of the listings. Now it's 2 or 3 offers instead of 10 to 15, and it's maybe 10 grand over the asking price instead of 100 grand. Like it's a very different market, and it's subjects. I haven't seen a multiple offer that was subject free, but I do think the stats right now would surprise people. Like, I think the correction is way less than what the media is portraying. Like in New West, the average home is still selling for 99.9% of what it's asking. It's still selling within 8 days of being on the market. And the sales ratios are about 39%. Now, if anybody's listening to this who isn't a realtor, anything over 20% is considered a seller's market. So we're double what you need to be. Now, we're not 100%, which we were 3 months ago. So it's a downward shift for sure. But I don't think prices have corrected nearly as much as buyers were hoping. They certainly have changed. But the big thing is lack of inventory. Like, people are saying, like, well, why hasn't it come down more? And even with all the changes, we're still at about 22% less inventory than we were at last year. There just aren't enough homes for sale.
Yeah, that's fueling it too. And people forget, like, there's going to be some mitigating factors too. Like, now that a lot of the travel restrictions and things have lessened up, we're going to get an influx of immigration that we haven't seen in 2 years, right? And we're probably going to do a little bit more. I believe that the idea is, at least for the next year, possibly two, to actually do more than we normally would do to kind of make up for the 2 years that we didn't have immigration, kind of thing. And that's to kind of keep the economy going, to have workers and demand for products and all this other kind of stuff. Because that's kind of how the Canadian economy works, and most economies around the world, unfortunately. Like, we're an aging population if it's just Canada. And if we don't have that influx of new, younger families and stuff to keep things going kind of the way they are, things grind to a halt. You may have all kinds of opinions about all that sort of stuff, but that's kind of the way it works. So we're going to see an influx of immigration, which is going to put a demand on our housing sector. I was going to ask, like, price-wise, we're seeing it here, and I'm sure probably you are too. It's always the really top of the market pricing that gets affected the worst here, right? So for here in Binbrook, where I live, we had a few properties actually sell for 1.7 or 1.8 million, which is absolutely insane for this area. So they've kind of come down, but they're still in that $1.4, $1.5 million range, or maybe even as low as 1.3. But these are houses that people bought less than 10 years ago for between 500,000 and 600,000. So they're still making an incredible amount of equity when they sell, but they're kind of feeling sore because they missed that little peak where they could have got maybe 100,000 more, kind of thing. It's like a stock market day after regret kind of thing. It's like, oh, I should have sold 2 weeks ago when it was peaked, but they're still making a ton. Like, are you seeing that kind of sort of thing there happening?
Yeah, I mean, complaining about missing the peak is like, you only know the peak in hindsight, right? It's such a waste of time. But I find, like, detached house 1.6 is kind of the average in New West. I think we're down from the very peak about 100 grand. I would say it's the opposite. It's our lower end stuff that seems to be suffering the most. Our builder specials, like, the builders just don't seem interested right now. Anything that's, hey, this is a tear down, but you could build a beautiful new house. They're all kind of waiting to see what happens.
Sure.
And the busy streets, right? Like, in a slower market, if you've got sort of a wart on your house, it's harder to sell. And then condos, I think, have dropped about, I would guess, about 60 grand on average. And the average condo in New West is about in the mid 600s.
Yeah. And that's from the peak. But if you're looking year over year, you're still seeing a gain, right?
We are up significantly still from last year. In fact, I have that right in front of me. Like, house price index. So all of New West, 862 is May's housing price index. 730 is last year. So we're still up 18%. Like, it's nothing to complain about missing.
But that's kind of what I'm seeing. The prognosticators, all the ones that were sort of predicting the market crash and have been for years. Now that they've seen a dip from this peak, they're sort of claiming victory, like saying, like, I was right. You see what happened? I was right. But then you mentioned, it's like, but it's still 17. And I've heard across the board here so far, 16, 17, 18% higher than it was last year. So you're still paying more than you would have. So if I was listening to you as a real estate agent and you've been telling me for the last 2 years, oh, just wait, because the prices are going to come down. At this point in Hamilton, we've had I think a 27% increase and then a 18% increase on top of that. And now you're going to declare victory because compared to 2 months ago, it's a little bit cheaper, but you're probably paying about 30-ish, 40% more than you would have if you bought 2 years ago. But we won. We were right. it's like, I think you need to go back to math class.
I want to jump in on something that Geoff had just talked about, house with warts, right? So, and I'm sure we're seeing this across the board here as well, is, 4 months ago, 6 months ago, any house would sell. Busy street, something to tear down, something that was, horribly, unconditional, high dollar, all that stuff. And those warts are really showing nowadays, right?
That's kind of what it was before, though, right? Like, if you were selling in Hamilton $1 million house, it had to be pristine because that was top of market for Hamilton. And if you were selling a $300,000 house, people were a bit more, forgiving. But now during that really low inventory period, everybody was buying everything because there was just nothing to buy. Like, so we had fewer than 200 houses on the market and we're getting 30, 40 offers on a house. But now that there's a lot more to choose from, we're back to, okay, if you want this money, it better be worth that money, right? Or we're going to negotiate. Adam, we haven't talked to you for a bit. What are you seeing out in Halifax? Kind of the same kind of thing, or?
Same kind of thing. I think we're a bit on the front of us figuring out whether this is a leveling out, whether this is a blip, or whether it's some kind of correction. So year to date, based on last month's sales, we have 1,700 sales, give or take a little bit. And the year before, we had 2,600. So that's 35% down. But there was times in the year when we were 40% down in terms of the number of sales we were seeing. We haven't seen prices correct, though. We haven't seen prices start to drop. Now, I think in the next week or two, you might start to see that change. But our average price is about 583,000. And the year before, it was 457,000. So we're still kind of riding that wave. But like a lot of people are saying is, we're seeing that there was a time where every house would sell. We had 2 weeks worth of inventory at one point in the year, and people were getting so panicked they were going quite rural, and especially if they'd come from the GTA, because they're like, oh, I'll drive 45 minutes, I don't mind. But in Nova Scotia, if you drive 45 minutes, you're literally driving 45 minutes. There's no traffic in that. So if you're driving 45 minutes and there's an accident, you're now an hour and a half worth of sitting in traffic, which was a hard thing to explain from people coming from the bigger cities. Is, our commute time is literally a commute time, because people would say, oh, I do 2 hours every day. 2 hours puts you in Moncton here. Like, it's a different beast altogether. So getting people educated on that was challenging. I think we are probably going to see it start to level out a little bit, but unless we get more inventory, we are probably going to see the sales pick back up. So there's a part of me that feels like it's probably more of a cooling than a correction, but it's a lot of ours is driven mainly by the outer province tax they've now levied on anyone coming from outside Nova Scotia, and truthfully, the interest rates too. So you've had a lot of local buyers that felt like they were being priced out already, and now with the interest rates, that's affecting them even more. We've definitely seen a drop off in some of the across Canada business that would come from people trying to move from a bigger city to come into Nova Scotia. We've seen that take a bit of a hit because of, so if anyone in Nova Scotia buys a property, they have to pay a 1.5% D-transfer tax. If you're coming from outside Nova Scotia, it's a 5% D-transfer tax. Now, if you're going to use it as your primary residence, you can get the 3.5% back over 6 months. But for a lot of people where they're not sure if this is going to have to be their primary residence or they're going to have to go back because working remotely won't be an option anymore, it seems to have taken the edge off Halifax being a great deal.
Right.
And I also saw a lot of people coming out of, parts of BC and parts of Toronto where they were like, wow, I live in a townhouse and I can sell it for $600,000. and they come and look at Halifax, and $600,000 wouldn't necessarily get you much more. So for some of them, it was like it wasn't worth doing. And I think that was an adjustment for a lot of people because, you know, in 2019, I think our average price was around 300. Now it might have been 290, it might have been 310, but now we're up into, you know, 585. It's almost doubled up in that time. So there was literally, for my early part of my career, people would come from the GTA or Quebec or BC, and they'd want to spend $450,000, and we could get them a very nice house. Now we're lucky to get them a semi. And I think that shift in people feeling like go to Halifax because it's cheap, that narrative isn't playing out quite the way that people think.
Yeah.
You know, we definitely
the same sort of when the US correction happened. There's a lot of Canadians traveling to like Florida, and there definitely was a reduction in pricing and stuff there. People were getting properties cheaper, but I know talking to a lot of agents that I know from all over Florida and all different places down in the US, especially like those ones are the ones where Canadians go, Arizona, Florida, that kind of thing. There's a lot of Canadians going down there thinking that they could buy houses for like $50,000 or $30,000, and they're like, no, not quite. So that kind of again, and that's a lot of media spin that kind of creates that impression in people's minds that you can just go and do this, right? We're getting close to an hour, so I kind of want to start wrapping up here. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but one thing I did want to ask: a lot of this happens as a result of government intervention, right? So you see the interest rates, the Bank of Canada gets the interest rates up. That kind of has a cooling effect on the market. And a lot of that is not direct intervention from the government, but at least pressure from the government to say, hey, we need you to help us combat inflation. So we want you to kind of move in this direction. And then they go and do what they do. And then you've got other types of regulation. I know in BC, they just announced, and I ask this always with BC because we've talked about this. I know Tony, Joe, and I have done videos of this in the past. Whatever happens in BC, give it like 6 to 8 months, and then it's happening in Ontario. It was like that with the non-resident speculation
Except
tax.
you guys do a better job because you actually watch.
We watch and see how you guys do it, and then we're like, okay, wait a minute, let's do it. But you guys just introduced. So we had chat about open bidding. That was a big hot topic of discussion, and now that the market's cooling off, that's kind of gone away a little bit, right? So nobody really wants to talk about that anymore, especially now that when you look at stats and you look at like Australia, who's had open bidding forever and their market's on fire, like, well, I guess that wasn't the solution. But in BC, I'm kind of interested because now you've got the cooling off period, right? Has that gone into effect?
Well, it's important to mention that it has not yet. It's a little interesting because the provincial government passed a bill,
right,
that enabled these things, except when you look at the actual definition of what it was going to be, there's 3 blank pages of nothing.
Right.
So they decided to research and implement them afterwards.
Yeah,
so
because we do that with condos. So new construction condos in Ontario, there's a 10-day I don't know what you want to call
rescission.
A rescission period or cooling off period, as people would say. So if you go into a builder's office and you buy a new construction condo, you've got 10 days to whatever you need to do. Think about it, check with your lawyer, check your finances. And if you decide, nah, this isn't for me, you can walk away. And then I think the idea in BC, and I've heard this, kind of across the country, is that they're thinking about doing that for all kinds of real estate, including resale residential real estate. So, and I guess the idea being like, if you do get wrapped up in one of these bidding wars, these offer competitions, and things get a little bit heated, you've got some time after the fact to let your buyer's remorse sink in and you to get out of the deal if you feel that you need to, kind of thing, right? What do you guys think? All these kind of things, open bidding, like, got any? What's the chatter like? What are your clients thinking? What are you thinking? And if you don't have any opinions, that's fine too. But ultimately, we're at the mercy of whatever regulations they impose upon us, right? But
so just a couple of quick things, and Geoff will jump in too. But so it's a 3-day rescission period after acceptance of an offer, right? But on the flip side, there's also a mandatory 5-day marketing time. So when a property goes to market, they basically effectively
for 5 days.
Yeah. So they have to be on the market for 5 days. and it basically prohibits and prevents preemptive offers and bully offers.
Do you do that with? We do that with power sales, not directly, but with power sale properties in Ontario, there is a marketing period that they want you to have it active for to make sure that it's been properly marketed, etc. But it's strictly for power sale properties, and I'm very much simplifying that. So I mean, none of us here. I'll just the disclaimer: we're not lawyers, we're not tax accountants, we're just real estate agents. So if you need legal advice or accounting advice, those are the people that you should talk to. But my general understanding of power sales, and I've bought and sold a few of them, is that there is a certain marketing period that they want to make sure that the people who own the property, not just the bank, it gets marketed properly, so you get true market value for that property. So it sounds very similar to that, basically.
Well, in fact, the 5-day marketing period was the one thing that the British Columbia Real Estate Association recommended, so because the regulator, the province says, well, we're doing our, research. We want to talk to stakeholders. They have not been listening to the real estate industry aside from this.
Right.
The other thing too is they are further investigating the whole bidding war, multiple offer process. But the reality is, it's too late, actually.
Yeah.
Because even when this stuff comes in, it's not. We've already seen the shift in the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Geoff, you had something to throw in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I'm not convinced that it's going to have the intended effect. One potential downside is, if you can walk away from any offer, and they have talked about, I don't know if it's finalized yet, but there might be some sort of small fee if you walk away. But really, if that fee is the same cost of having a home inspection, it's whatever. Yeah. But let's go back to this hot market, because it's different now as the market shifts. But let's say this came into effect when the market was nuts, and you had 3 new listings that all came out the same week, and we're all looking at offers on Tuesday. And you've got a buyer pool of about, let's say 9 buyers. Mm-hmm. Well, before these new rules came in, each of those 9 buyers had to look at those 3 listings and decide which of them was the one they wanted the most to write on. And I think all of us have had conversations with those buyers where they're like, well, why can't I write on all of them? And you're like, because if you write a subject-free offer on all 3 of these properties, you could be obligated to buy all of them if you win them all.
Yeah. Now, I've had that conversation multiple times. And again, it goes back to, well, we need to be acting in good faith and
over and over again. But if there's a walk away for any reason ability from those buyers, those 10 buyers or 9 buyers should all take their shot on all 3 of them if in a hot market, right? And we all know that 9 people bidding on a house, that offer ends up going for way more money than 3 people. Like that's just demand, right? So I don't know. I'm not opposed to people having a rescission period. We've all seen in the new construction, it hasn't tanked the new construction market, but as a how to cool off the market tactic, I think it's very flawed.
Yeah. I mean, the devil's in the details, right?
I think a lot of the issues I have with some of and whether it's the government or whether it's the real estate, arbitrators, is they often are trying to, shut the barn door after the horse has already bolted. Like here, where they started to put the out of province buyer's tax in place, it was to cool the market. But we already had 2 years of the market being on absolute fire. And then it's like, okay, well, now we'll cool it. But the prices have already gone so high. It's now starting to correct anyway. But anyone that was struggling to get into the market is 2 years behind the ball now anyway. And it's the same with the open bidding system. Is I don't have a problem with trying to have more transparency. And I think one of the things our industry needs to do is make it clearer that, it's not like what you see on TV. The majority of agents I know are very good at their jobs. They try and be as fair and do the job the best as they can. We are human. Some people make mistakes, but there's not really this cloak and dagger mystery trying to outdo each other that much. It's just more so a case of it's a bidding war, it's a market, and sometimes you lose in a market. And when you throw these things in, are you necessarily getting a better product? Are you necessarily getting a better solution? And with some of the way the bidding systems have been explained, it sounds like, well, the person with the most money will win. which is the exact thing that happens in competition now. So it's
Yeah.
like you haven't actually solved the problem. You may have made a simpler way of people viewing it, but the problem remains the same. And for me, I just wish that, a lot of times we push for things to change as industry members, and we don't always necessarily get heard, or it gets positioned as, well, you don't want it because it doesn't benefit you. And I think every single one of us would work in a more balanced and fair market where it feels like everybody's winning.
Yeah.
But that's never what they ever put in place. They kind of go too far after it.
Well, Jessica, you worked with Katie and Daniel Steinfeld, right? Like you did an open bid. I've interviewed them before too, and I know Daniel mentioned, one of the things he mentioned was, as much as like these bidding war competitions tend to scare away buyers, because there are buyers that don't want to participate in that kind of closed competition. But once you have an open bidding competition, some of the buyers will get scared away, but a lot of those buyers that were scared away of the closed system come back into the open system. So you're still getting that competition. You're still getting a whole bunch of people bidding. And then what was your experience? I think you've only done the one listing so far that way,
I did the one, and honestly, it was a great experience. I would definitely do it again. It's not going to work for every house. It's not going to work for every market. And I do feel strongly that changing things at a government level is often historically not a great idea.
Yes.
Whenever that sort of thing, anything kind of can affect the market that way. There's just so many things that they don't think about, or like you said, it's after the fact. But the open bid process was great for some people. I have friends myself who are extremely analytical. They're not impulsive, and they just stepped out of the market. Like they could afford it. Like, let's say a house was 600,000, they could afford 600,000. But they didn't want to bid 100 grand over someone else. And they just couldn't get past that in their mind. And that's what the open bidding is nice to allow those people to feel like, I'll go to 600 if I'm beating somebody by 1,000, by 5,000. I don't want to go to 600 if it's 100 grand over the next person, because that's kind of skewed in their mind. So it does.
Yeah. And they just don't know what the other person is doing, right? So it's
exactly,
totally like,
right? It's that thing that, like, it brings in those buyers that aren't comfortable in this bold, impulsive market that favors people taking huge risks. They come in, and then they actually do bring that price up. And I do think that in general, we've all seen offer situations where you have 10 offers. Most of them are around the same. And so people are very much going to pay market value. And so an open bid system is going to get it to market value. It's that like crazy difference of some random person. Like for us in Kingston, it would usually be, for a while there, it was somebody from Toronto would come in and just blow everyone out of the water.
Yeah.
And that everybody adjusted eventually, right? So changing things on a government level isn't always what we want. Yeah. But I was going to ask, actually, we have a situation now with our markets that it's still very unpredictable. So it's not like things have shifted this way and we're not getting multiple offers, because I think we also have a situation where our agents aren't always doing things in the same strategy. So we have places that are underpriced, or places that as soon as there's another offer, people jump to 100 grand like that. Yeah. We're not, 10 grand over. We're either there's no offers and you can do conditions, and some people lowball at that point, or if there's 3 offers, they're jumping to 100 grand over. So I don't know. Are you guys experiencing that as well?
I'm closest one to you. We're getting a lot of wait and see buyers. Like you got the offer. If you're having an offer date, they're waiting for the offer date to see if anybody bids on it, or they're waiting to see. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, if you get one, or you might not get anything on offer day. And I've experienced this just recently. We just firmed up a sale less than a week ago, where we needed to sell quickly because they had purchased conditionally, actually just north of where you are in Kingston. And so we needed to get it done fairly quickly. It was conditional upon sale of their property. So we tried listed a bit low, not crazy low, and had an offer day. Nothing happened. Listed it at where we needed to be and let it sit for a bit with, offers any time. Still nothing really happened. And then we got a little bit like, okay, well, we need to get people in the door. So we did list it even lower than we did the first time, got people in the door, and we ended up getting 3 offers and ended up selling it probably just very slightly less than where we needed to be. But they could make up the difference, so that wasn't a big deal for them. But again, and that all happened within about 2.5 weeks. So you're right. There's a bunch of stuff that you list and it sits. And as soon as you get one offer, and this happened, I remember back in 2017, 18 as well, when things kind of cooled off a little bit, people were sitting and they're waiting, and they just have your property bookmarked. And then as soon as their agent is told, oh, we got one offer, suddenly 5 more show up, right? It's just a very weird one. But what are you guys seeing in your areas?
Probably something a bit similar. Like I say, we've only just started to see offers being held on a certain day start to, I'm going to say fail, but I mean start to get not to get the same results they used to. But I also saw people list and say all offers left open for 24 hours or 48 hours, and they weren't catching offers under that strategy either. This week is the first time I've seen a property apply that situation of you can come anytime you want, but you got to leave your offer open for response for a certain amount of time, that I saw one catch multiple offers. So I feel like we're just on that tipping point of where the strategy is going to change. It feels very much like early 2020 here. And the problem with that is the buyers don't know what to do, because they then feel like they've got to get to the property as soon as they can. They have to write straight away and try and get offers in. But it's not like when we're holding offers, they know I've got 4 days to think on this, or I've got 3 days to think on this. Now they're going and they're almost more panicked. So I think that's why you're not necessarily seeing it pick up, because they've got so much to consider now, because the environment's kind of changed for them. So I think it's probably going to take a week or 10 days, maybe, even 3 weeks to figure out this is what we've got to do moving forward. And then you've got the X factor of, if the sales start to pick up again, will we end up reverting back to holding offers again?
Yeah, I'm waiting till the end of July, August to kind of really get a hold on what's really happening. Because like you said, like Jessica mentioned and stuff, I think everybody's experiencing, we're in flux, right? And in Ontario, we just had a provincial election, which was really weird. And you've had the interest rate hikes, and we just had the opening of all sort of restrictions and stuff. So people are like, I'm stuck in my house for 2 years. I want to go to the beach for the summer, and all this kind of stuff happening. So until you've had a few months, I think, for everything to kind of level off and chill out, and people look at the interest rate hikes and say, yeah, it's not as bad as I thought. I can still afford to buy a house. And, there's lots to look at now. So, hey, let's go. Because in Ontario, at least here in Hamilton, we always had the seasonal spikes, which, depending where you are, don't affect as much because we've got winter and summer. In Victoria and the West, probably, but not as much. But, in Kingston, I'm sure is the same, and out in Halifax, same. But we had the spring market, the true spring market, where, March, April, May, you've got crazy busy market, high prices, lots of buyers out there. And then it kind of chills out for the summer. And then there's another secondary spike in September, end of September, October, once the kids have gone back to school, people got a bit more time on their hands. There's another little spike. And then it kind of chills out through Christmas until the next spring market. Although it's always busy, but those are the spikes, right? So I'm thinking that September spike might come a little bit earlier, as people kind of get their feet under them and be like, yeah, this isn't quite as crazy as I thought it was. And, let's see where they go. Until gas hits $5 a liter, then we're all screwed.
Yeah.
I would say that's totally how it was for us too. Just a little weird compared to the normal spring. And but for our cottages, they actually have stayed quite high. And although people are listing them for over twice what they should have been 3 years ago,
right?
They're still selling. I have people coming out of the woodwork. They're like, "Is it? Can we finally go get a cottage? It's over, right?" And then I'm like, "Oh, sorry,
no,
it's not
no.
quite."
And I've heard that
over
across
there
the board, through Kawarthas, Muskoka, all the way out to Parry Sound. Waterfront properties are still crazy prices. They've kind of calmed down slightly in some areas, but slightly being calmed down to what they were selling for in December, which is still 67% more than it was the year before. Like, it's still nuts. But we've been here, like I said, for about an hour. So I wanted to thank you all. I don't want to drag that. We could talk all day, of course. But we all have stuff to do. So I do appreciate you all coming in and giving this chat. Maybe this is the second sort of cross Canada update that we've done. We added Jessica for this one. Maybe we'll get one more. That way we got a nice 6 grid. And eventually we'll get it to a Brady Bunch grid. We'll have everybody across the country going. But I do appreciate y'all coming. So from east to west, we'll go this time. We got Adam Cooper at Remax Nova in Halifax with the Thomas Bagogloo team out there. Jessica Hellard at which brokerage are you at?
Remax Finest.
Remax Finest in Kingston. Jessica is also the founder of the Kingston Animal Rescue, in case you didn't know. So if you follow along Jessica, she always has pictures of like dogs and other nicer and sometimes weirder animals on her feed, but they're all cute though, so that's okay. And then me, I'm in Hamilton in Bimbrook. You all know me, Geeky Agent here in Hamilton. Geoff McLennan in New Westminster BC, just outside of Vancouver. And as we've seen multiple times, Tony Joe, who's been on this thing with me, I don't know how many times, talk about real estate, talk about Star Trek, talk about guilty pleasure sci-fi TV shows and trivia. Had his family on to do Family Feud trivia where I broke my chair and fell on my ass, which was my child laughed at me for I don't know how long. So Tony Joe at Remax Prime Properties in Victoria. A great bunch of people, just happen to all be Remax agents because I just happen to know a lot of Remax agents, which is good. Giving you their insights on what's happening in real estate across the country right now, and check them out in your local areas if you need real estate services, buying, selling, and or investing. And yeah, thanks guys. We'll get together maybe next time. We'll just talk movies and stuff. Nice. Before you go, what's your one favorite thing that you're watching right now? TV, movie, whatever. Mine is Stranger Things. Best thing going right now is Stranger Things season 4.
Oh yeah, I just caught up on Stranger Things too, and I don't want to spoil anything, but that running up the hill scene.
That's good.
Oh man, yeah, I'm with you there. I can't wait for the final two.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet, guys, but I am really enjoying Stranger Things.
Tony will be watching Stranger Things season 4 in about 3 years.
That's right. That's how I do it.
He's on Strange New Worlds though. You're there though.
Love
Star
that.
Trek Strange New Worlds.
I'm gonna say The Boys.
And The Boys too.
I saw that. I saw the thing telling me to watch it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that comic's always been pretty out there, and the TV show is doing a good job of keeping up with the weirdness.
Better, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I will caution you with The Boys, because if you read the episode descriptions on Amazon Prime, it has nothing to do with the episode. I just realized, like, they're trolling the hell out of us, because I read the episode description on the last episode and it was bad. I was like, I can't watch this with my mother who's been watching the show with me. And then I watched the episode and was like, oh, it's not that bad at all. It's brutal, but not anywhere near what they were describing. So just so you know, the Amazon episode descriptions are a complete troll. Don't fall for it.
Nice.
But anyways, guys, thank you so much, everybody. We'll chat again soon and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.